Salesforce business analysts are one of the roles most impacted by the AI revolution. And today's experts will tell you how. Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Ben Brumfield, who is a co-founder of Mavtron, a Salesforce SI and ISV. Ben is a Salesforce certified business analyst, among other certifications, and also the co-founder of Swift BA, an AI-powered app, which is changing the way BAs engage with stakeholders through meetings. Joining Ben is Vanessa Grant. Vanessa is a 10X certified Salesforce BA and product owner at Mosaic. She's a contributing author at Salesforce Ben and launched a Salesforce Trailblazer BA community, which you can find in her LinkedIn bio. Vanessa is a mentor, an advisor, a two-time Dreamforce speaker, a co-host of the Salesforce Career Show podcast, helping others navigate Salesforce and the Salesforce space. Please welcome to the stage, Ben and Vanessa.
Oh, thank you so, Mark. It's a lovely introduction. Really appreciate it. I think as we've seen throughout this entire week, it's no doubt that GPT is really something to behold. I mean, we are in an AI era that is real, and we're starting to feel the impact. And we've seen all types of demonstrations and way that is impacting all types of jobs to be done. But one place that we think that's really going to accelerate is with business analysis and leveling up business analysis. And so Vanessa and I, we want to take you through kind of a forward look into AI tech, trends, and essential skills. You know, what free tools can we use to leverage today to level up AI, as well as other paid tools and other options. And then aspirationally looking into the future, where is that headed?
Business analysis is the foundation for any successful project. People who've heard me speak, you may have heard me say this before, but I believe it wholeheartedly, and probably because I heard it from Ian Gotts. But I've worked on a number of Salesforce projects as a BA. And I would say, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I find working these projects is finding like the time and the budget, the resources to accomplish the things that I need to do in order to make these projects successful. You know, there's, I would say, so many Salesforce professionals besides myself acknowledge that business analysis is the foundation of a successful Salesforce engagement. But I have seen, like, as a consultant, like time and time again, you'll have these multi-million-dollar projects that just teeter on business analysis done poorly. So poor requirements gathering, poorly written user stories, poor stakeholder engagement. And it's always been a challenge for me to advocate for my project's needs, to get the time and budget that I need in order to do these things right. So what we want to offer you today is maybe the possibility of, instead of having to pull your hair out to kind of convince your stakeholders that business analysis is important, you know, justify your existence, and fighting leadership, you know, to give you those time and resources to do projects right. Maybe we want to challenge you to try and solve the problem in a different way, by maybe adding AI to your work as a business analyst. You might still be able to accomplish the things that you always wanted to do in these projects, but maybe with AI, you'd be able to do it with the allocated time and resources that you're given. We want you to think about a world where maybe that's possible, that you can get everything done and done right in the time allotted with the resources that you have. We want to offer you a look into the future, as well as a look into the present, because a lot of this is actually already possible, where you might be able to deliver proper business analysis despite the tight budgets, despite the tighter timelines, and perhaps even have your BA work be more comprehensive than ever, where AI is not just a tool, but it's a collaborator and helping you do more with less, and also ensuring that no detail is missed. This future is not just imaginable, it's accessible, and it starts now with our agenda.
All right, so just a little agenda. I think as BAs, we like structure. We like to know where we're headed. So why BA plus AI? We're going to dig into the details of what are the trends and why do we think that's the future? And then we'll touch on the importance of business analysis. If it wasn't obvious already, we're going to emphasize it again, because really, can you emphasize it too much? Probably not. And then Vanessa and I are going to have a fun chat and walk through Salesforce business analysis in the AI era. What are the jobs to be done that we have to do throughout the life cycle of a BA? And where is AI kind of entering into the picture and leveling up those areas? And then we'll close with some final thoughts. Okay, so why BA plus AI? Why do we think that this technology will really start to make a difference and continue to do so for business analysis? So I like to introduce this concept by just thinking about what I've experienced personally. So have you ever been working through a problem and trying to understand an obstacle or problem and trying to get a complete picture of it? And then maybe when you go beyond that, when you're trying to solution and you're trying to figure something out, and it just seems rather complex, you just can't seem to work through, the best path forward. And then you pass it along to a colleague. You invite a friend in, a coworker, and you ask them to take a look at it. And then they say, oh, well, how about we just do this right here? And then that's a path forward. And you're just like, wow, I did not think of that. It's as if sometimes when you collaborate with people, it's as if the fog clears. And I think a point that's important about that is that there's great strength in diversity of perception, diversity of thought, the ability to look at an obstacle from different angles. What I love about this picture here, it's AI generated, if you might have imagined for an AI conference. If you see in the middle, there's a cube, and this cube represents an obstacle or a problem. And you see little figures around that looking at it from different angles. And it speaks to the idea that the more angles to which you view a problem, you start to uncover new details, new patterns. And as you broaden that view of the problem, you're able to understand it faster and be more creative in terms of the solutions that you implement. And the incredible thing about AI is it's another angle to which we can view problems. And as BAs, we're always looking for that, because the more we have, the more we're able to accelerate our understanding of the problem so that we can then deliver solutions. And now on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about cost, because that's another element. Again, what are we talking about now? We're talking about why BA plus AI. Why is that the future? Okay, so we talked about the clear advantages of utilizing AI to view problems from a different angle. There's no question about that. Now, what about cost? So some of the leading AI models, such as GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT-4, these are just some of the leading models that are out there. What we found is that when looking at the pricing, of course, these models cost money to use. Now, if you're using ChatGPT, you're not feeling the cost, but if you're using applications or otherwise, there's cost involved. And so if we actually look just from May of 23 to around January 1 of 24, some of the leading models, we're looking at a 4x reduction and 3x reduction of price. This is really significant because this is a force to be reckoned with. This means that this technology will continue to become more and more accessible. And that's just another reason why BA plus AI is going to occur. And now on the next slide, let's talk about capability. We saw how costs for these models was going down like that. And honestly, we're still early in the game, but it seems to be potentially exponential. Now let's talk about capability of these models. So clearly there's incredible advances in terms of capability. The reasoning capability of these models, its ability to puzzle solve and work through complex problems, that is continuing to increase. Another powerful thing in terms of capability is the token context window. So Gemini 1.5 Pro is just a new AI model that came out with Google. And they have a token context window of 1 million tokens and research up to 10 million tokens. What that means is essentially, this is the amount of information that a model can process at one time. And what it means is it speaks again to the capability and how through time, these models are becoming incredibly capable and it's unlocking new use cases. Okay, so the big picture. What's the big picture here? So again, we have cost of capability going downward at the same time as model capability is going upwards. Okay, so what's the result of that? Well, we're creating a gap. And this gap is called the capability, I call it the capability excuse me,
Wow.
the capability cost gap. A little tongue twister there. And so the result of that, these are two powerful diverging forces. And the result of that is this will become cheaper and more accessible, which will drive adoption. And then secondly, it will unlock new use cases. So why BA plus AI? Because the benefits are clear. The ability to view obstacles that we're trying to solve from additional angles and leveraging that technology. And then we have these two forces, cost and capability, diverging. And as they continue to diverge, just as previous technology trends as you've seen, this will unlock new opportunity and further advance adoption.
Thank you, Ben. So AI is getting better, it's getting cheaper. But how does this impact business analysis? Well, first, for folks that maybe are more AI oriented and less business analysis oriented, let's talk a little bit about the importance of business analysis. And I think that means touching on what BAs do on a typical Salesforce project. So I'm just going to run through this real quick, just so everybody can level set on what we mean by a business analyst in the Salesforce ecosystem and what they do over the course of a Salesforce project. BAs are very Salesforce project based. So right now we've got it split up into 4 different sections. The first would be the analyze stage. So we're talking about you have a new Salesforce project. We know that we're a go. We throw a BA on it. There's going to be a lot of discovery so that we understand what the requirements of the project are. We're going to have to collaborate with our stakeholders so that we're really clear on what we're building. There may be business process mapping for a current state, a future state, writing down requirements and getting those validated, writing down user stories and getting those validated. So that's all the stuff that would happen at the analyze stage. Then we've got the build stage. All right, we know what we're doing. We've written some user stories. We're getting them into a sprint. We're throwing developers on them. Does the BA go into a cave until the next project? No. They are also still supporting tongue twisters today, Ben. Still supporting during the build stage. The BA will do development support and really act as that bridge between the technical team and your business stakeholders. They may run demos. They may lead user acceptance testing. Now, I'll throw the little footnote, mental footnote here of business analysis is still, it can look different on every different project. It can look different whether you're an external or an internal consultant. So just because you're a BA and you don't do all these things, don't be alarmed. It's not that, or you do a whole bunch of extra things, like, don't be alarmed. This is just a kind of more basic, likely things that a BA would be responsible for. So, okay, the user stories are getting developed, configured, and now they're getting delivered. So they're getting moved into production. You need to go live. So the BA may be responsible for some change management. There obviously will be some documentation. And oftentimes the BA is going to end up wearing that training hat. As much as I would love to hire Salesforce trainers for every project, again, time and budget constraints. You may hear me talk about that a lot today. And then lastly, we got the operate stage where the BA will often be taking additional feedback and understanding what additional features users may want from something, doing maintenance, so training new folks, and then also keeping in mind any Salesforce releases until they gather enough things so that they're ready for the next project, or the next project happens to them and they go through the cycle all over again. So this is the typical BA role in a Salesforce project lifecycle. But what is the cost of poor business analysis? Because again, I said earlier, budget constraints, time constraints, resources, fighting the good fight, even just being here today, trying to evangelize the importance of business analysis for successful Salesforce engagements. If we don't do business analysis properly, what can happen? you get to the build, all of a sudden you've got these kind of half-baked user stories going into a sprint, and you've got developers that are like, I'm not really sure what I'm building, but we're going to build it anyway because it is way too difficult to go back and say, hey, we really need some better user stories and clear acceptance criteria. So sometimes they'll just build stuff and hope that maybe QA will get the blame for it later, because then you get to QA and they're like, what are we testing? We're not quite sure. But all right, it looks like it's working based on the vague instructions that I have and the vague requirements that I have. So again, more confusion among the team. But again, oftentimes it's harder to go backwards and do business analysis properly than to just kind of keep kicking the can forward. So you get to delivery. It's like, all right, let's just throw it into production and see the feedback. We'll take it in the feedback. It'll be part of the next release, phase two. And then you get to operate, where we're in maintenance mode after we've already delivered something that we weren't even clear what we were delivering on. But there's also no documentation because business analysis wasn't done properly. So the consulting company or the admin leaves the organization, new one comes in, and nobody has any idea why it happened. And that's where you end up with hey, why are you doing this thing? It's just the way we've always done it. So again, the importance of quality business analysis cannot be overemphasized.
Vanessa, you made some really good points there. And it sounds like sometimes there can be a little chaos going on that you have to work through. And that actually reminds me early on when I first took on one of my early projects as a business analyst. And I would say my experience, I describe it as, it felt as though all the stakeholders had their hair on fire and no one wanted to be left out. Vanessa, I'm sure you've never experienced anything like that.
Firefighters, like I think it's on my resume somewhere in a bullet.
But I think that speaks to kind of the powerful nature of business analysis when it's done well, right? We're converting chaos into clarity in some sense, or hopefully not too much chaos, but oftentimes we have basically kind of a soup of information, right? We have stakeholders, we have requests, problems, wish lists, we have business initiatives. And through business analysis, the incredible output of it is we translate that soup of information into something that's actionable, something you can execute on, that's rooted in the objectives of the business, but has also been prioritized based on risk and impact. And that's kind of the magic of business analysis and why it's so critical.
All right, so you ready to talk about Salesforce business analysis in the AI era, Ben?
Let's do it.
All right. So now that we understand what a BA does, we're going to dig into some of the more jobs to be done at each of these stages, and talk about how we might be able to level those jobs up with AI. So the analyze stage, before people want to shove the BAs in the cave for the rest of the project. But this is, everybody knows business analysis. This is customer discovery. We're talking about identifying what we're doing. What's the scope of our work? What are the obstacles? Who are the people that we need to speak to in order to get the clarity that we need for our developers on a project? Doing that research. Do they have any Salesforce licenses? What app exchange tools do they use? Understanding the business processes, so documenting the current state, nailing down that scope, and also conducting a lot of meetings is going to be super important. And as a BA, building that trust with those early meetings and figuring out how to conduct those super important.
Okay, so Vanessa, how do we level that up with AI? Well, assisted preparation, organizational and persona research, and assisted questioning. Let's go to preparation. So preparation, we know it's key. Preparation is key. Am I right, Vanessa?
So key. And not, again, with the time, not always a luxury that we have.
No, it isn't. But we know the importance as BAs. We need to calibrate our aim, whether it's maybe an initial discovery where we're going in, we're just trying to t-shirt size, what we're dealing with here, or maybe we're further along in the project and we're dealing with a specific user story and acceptance criteria and trying to get that nailed down.
Or even like, I'll throw it in, Ben, there's so many times as a consultant, I've gone onto an engagement and had to be on a project with clouds that I've never seen before, or they need to implement App Exchange products that I've never heard of before. And discovery starts next week, and maybe I don't have the time to stop and do all the trail mixes and get the certification before I go into that meeting. Yeah, prep is
Exactly.
important though, but it's hard.
Exactly. No, I mean, we love to be perfectly knowledgeable about anything, but reality is we live in a world with constraints. But we can use ChatGPT to assist us in that, just among our other tools, such as reaching out to colleagues or Trailhead. ChatGPT is a powerful tool for helping you do persona research, industry knowledge and jargon. They might be speaking a language that you're not so familiar with, and doing some research and understanding that is important. Understanding the organization's purpose, objectives, and obstacles. Product familiarity, like you said, okay, what do we have? We have an unlimited edition org. What do we have? Sales Cloud, Service Cloud? Do we have ERP? Understanding how those things come together ahead of your engagements. What about the regulatory landscape? Understanding that. Utilizing ChatGPT is an incredibly powerful way to add a tool to your tool belt to assist in preparation.
Yeah, and I've actually used it myself. There are times where I can think where I didn't have ChatGPT and I could have used it, like when I was working with a medical device client. They were talking about needing Part 11 compliance. Like I knew what Part 11 compliance was. Like that would have been easy to ask ChatGPT about. But certainly, being able to leverage ChatGPT for like, okay, I have a client that is interested in setting up Salesforce maps. So okay, that's a lot of features that are on there. So maybe I can start using it for prepping. Give me an understanding of the major features of Salesforce maps. Give me some examples of how a finance company, maybe I'm not particularly well versed in the financial industry, might use Salesforce maps in some of their common business processes. There's all sorts of ways that you can accelerate your preparation before you go into these meetings in a way that is beyond just searching on Google.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, assisted preparation is key, and ChatGPT is incredibly powerful for that. But also, what about helping you ask questions? We can actually utilize AI to go a little further, right? So we can actually use it to help us ask questions. And now you might think, okay, so ahead of my meeting, I'm just, writing a prompt and I'm basically putting that together and saying, okay, ChatGPT, here's what I'm doing. Kind of give me a few questions, suggestions, maybe something like that. But the fact is that when we go into engagements, we can prepare in the sense that we want to calibrate our aim. But the truth is, as BAs, we're all about digging in deeper. We're all about asking the 5 whys, and we have to be adaptable and dynamic in that approach. So as we move into the future, what I think we're going to see a lot of is GPTs and this AI technology going from passive to active. And what I mean by that is you can actually write a prompt one time and fine tune it for your specific meeting. And you can utilize that to actually assist you in writing questions. So let's look at this prompt here just really quickly. Okay, so you'll be given the most recent chunk of real-time transcript. Your task is to analyze this chunk and identify a relevant question that will accelerate the business analyst to a complete and accurate understanding of the obstacle being explored. Wow, this is quite compelling. What we're doing here is we're bringing AI along, like I said, in our stakeholder meetings, and effectively saying, AI, you're here to assist us. You're here to, like I said before, view the obstacle from a different angle. And you can actually feed in that transcript and have it situationally aware of the context of the conversation, and generate questions based on ambiguity to help accelerate you in that process. And this is a tool that we've been working on called SwiftBA. And this is just one example of where this technology will go from passive to active.
And excited about the SwiftBA future. The idea that we can throw in some questions and then have AI support us in follow-up questions because it's understanding what we're talking about, and even if we don't get to ask them at the time, being able to use them in a follow-up, maybe a grooming session. Exciting future.
Right.
So,
I mean, I wish we had the ability to think of everything and analyze every detail, but it's always helpful to have, someone else or an AI, if you're not likely to have a collaborator with you, kind of assisting you in those questions.
No, absolutely. And I think also there's so many people, and this just kind of happens where um the first time you're a business analyst, like as much as I would love that you're going to be there with like a senior BA who's going to be guiding you through the whole thing, oftentimes it's just, hey, here's a stakeholder, go run that meeting. And so having AI to assist you along the way, I imagine could kind of close that expertise gap even to a certain extent. So stakeholder collaboration. What does a BA do during this part of the analyze stage? So we're talking about documenting the future state. We've already kind of discussed the current state because that's really important as we go into Salesforce projects is understanding how they do that process today, but documenting with the future state that they're looking for, capturing information and validating it. We always want to make sure that after we document something that we're really making clear with the business stakeholders that what we've captured is what they actually meant. So getting sign off, getting validation, working towards stakeholder alignment. Oftentimes I'll have stakeholders that will have two different versions of a process or two different versions of their own future. And so making sure that everybody is aligned on how the project is going to be delivered, what we're actually doing, what their current state is important. And that's also part of building trust. So when you have transparency between the stakeholders and also between the team that's actually delivering the project, super important, and identifying those key stakeholders and how to communicate with them. You're going to communicate with your C-suite folks and your executive sponsors in a different way than you're going to communicate with folks that are actually, doing that process maybe day to day in Salesforce. So thinking about how you want to approach those conversations in a way to build that trust up is going to be really important. So how do we level that up with AI, Ben?
Right. Well, I mean, stakeholder collaboration is all about collaborating with stakeholders and learning from them, capturing a bunch of information. And so we can use AI to accelerate capture with transcription tools. And then also, I'll talk a little bit about AI-powered collaborators for stakeholder information capture and the future of what that looks like.
Ooh, all right. So
Okay,
I'm just going to start with saying like, y'all, like, and I'm not Southern, so I don't know why I started that way, but this is how serious I am about it.
I'm Southern. I'm from Louisiana.
There we go. Okay, that's why. That's why I'm saying that. So you're influenced, Ben. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of getting a transcription tool to accelerate your business analysis. And I'm excited that I wouldn't let Ben not talk about this because it's something you can do tomorrow. And it is not cost prohibitive. This is something that is so important if you are going into stakeholder meetings. And I've said historically on my BA sessions, like make sure that you record your meetings because you don't want to be, you can't actively listen if you're like taking notes the whole, okay, that was a great point. Hold on a second while I write it out or I type it out. And it kills engagement. It also, notes are never good as the real thing and being able to listen to it and go backtracking if they're making an important point. And even when it's been like a team that's got some challenging compliance issues, like if you're doing a discovery with a legal team or something like that, they maybe they're not comfortable with certain things, but making sure that you get recordings, like so key.
As a BA, we have to consider so much information. We are dealing with an organization. We have to keep in mind the objectives, the purpose, the obstacles. We're dealing with, existing systems. We have to consider as a Salesforce BA, what are those constraints that are already in place? We're talking about all the existing processes, all the metadata, and then we're engaging with stakeholders, and they're complex in nature. So that's a lot of information to deal with and keep track of. So really using a transcription tool is key. One part is it can take notes for you and you could utilize that and that accelerates you. But more importantly is we work in the details. And it's very important to have a tool that makes sure that gives you access basically to that knowledge base that you're building as you are working to put an accurate and complete picture of the obstacle together. And so this is key for making sure you can go back and you can analyze and you can actually consider all of that information. Let's imagine. Okay.
All right. Imagine a world.
Imagine a world where Vanessa Grant, Salesforce BA, the star BA, comes into our organization and there's a lot of feature requests and issues coming up in terms of the sales process. And maybe there's maybe the sales executive or the team leader comes and says, hey, Vanessa, something's going on. Where our lead conversion, it's just not what it used to be. Something's off, something's going on. And maybe it's a large organization. Let's say it's 50 or 100 sales reps. And they say, Vanessa, why don't you speak to everyone and figure that out? No problem, right?
If they want to give me the time and the budget, but
right,
unlikely.
Time and budget, right? So here's a new exciting glimpse in the future. This is future looking. It's aspirational, but it's not completely, in sci-fi. So imagine the ability to say, okay, AI, I'm a Salesforce BA, and I've got some issues surrounding the sales process. Here's what I know about it. Here's the objectives of the business, the purpose of it. Here's all this information. Deploy. And wow, it goes out and sends a message to all those key stakeholders in the sales process and says, your star-studded Salesforce business analyst, Vanessa Grant, is doing a little research into this specific problem with the sales process. And the AI actually interacts with the stakeholder and asks some follow-up questions and collects kind of an initial state information. And then all that information over the course of a couple of days comes back to you, Vanessa, synthesized with some takeaways and some key points that you can dig deeper into. That's the future that we're headed towards. This idea that we can bring AI as BA collaborators, and not in the sense to replace the work we do, because the work we do is so important and it's nuanced and challenging. But like you said, we have constraints. We have limited budgets, limited timelines, limited people, limited resources. How powerful would it be to utilize this to unlock new capability, to access stakeholders and do improvement that wasn't possible before? And so that's kind of the future we're headed. And what I want to show you is just what you see on the screen here is a screen grab from outset.ai. Now, this is something that's tangible. This is something that's real. It's a company that's focused actually on this same concept, but they're doing it for basically in-user customer research. But my guess is that before too long, you'll start to see products emerge on the market that actually are meant for Salesforce professionals, are meant for the Salesforce BA to accelerate you to a complete and accurate picture of the obstacle you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I mean, it's stakeholder collaboration and discovery at scale. I mean, as great as it is to have a couple of SMEs, let me shadow them and walk me through their processes, to the idea that we might be able to, send out and collaborate with all of the stakeholders and then collect all that information and synthesize that information into actionable insights onto a process that they're all a part of is really actually an enticing prospect. There's also, and I've seen there are companies that are even doing a thing where they'll actually follow your movements. So if you go through the process, it could actually start recording some of that information and getting insights from it. So like, oh, everybody accidentally hits this button. Like maybe that's an insight that would come back after maybe 50 salespeople, go, oh yeah, this dreaded process that I have to go through, like, oh, this error message always pops up or whatever it might be. But I love the idea that, again, it wouldn't be something that I would actively have to do, but I could still get a lot of insight and maybe we could prioritize certain things based on the feedback we get back. You don't want to lose that human element because I think it's really important to connect with those SMEs as well. But gathering that information at scale is really an exciting prospect. Business process mapping, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We want to be able to visualize current states, future states, break a business process into steps, have a visual for stakeholders and developers to agree on what an end-to-end process looks like, and get everybody on the same page. But we could also use AI for this too, Ben.
We certainly can, Vanessa. And this is where we're seeing really exciting stuff. So let's go to the next slide and dive right in. So we're already seeing the capability to generate process maps from information, from instructions, maybe from a call transcript. Actually, there's a product out there called Elements GPT. And I was able to experiment with it, and it's quite something to see a process map drawn by AI, because I don't know if I'm alone here, but drawing process maps is not always the most fun thing. And sometimes you're crunched for time. And in addition,
Crunched for time. As I
sometimes
struggle with shapes, dragging shape after shape after shape, and trying to get the fill on them all the correct color and the font. And
and
no, I'd never do
sometimes
it.
sometimes it's just hard to get started, right? But it's incredible how tools like this can accelerate us to generation of process maps, so we can start to identify, okay, where are those gaps? Where do we need to meet with stakeholders to kind of iron this process out? And then, okay, what's beyond that? Okay, live transcription from your meetings and dynamic process map generation. So what does that mean? We have the ability to do very accurate live transcription, okay? We also have the ability to generate process maps, okay, from that data, from that information. Okay, so we have these two things that we can do, and they're getting better and better. What about an exciting future, Vanessa, where I can be in a conversation with a stakeholder, completely paying attention to the questions I'm asking them, digging deeper, asking the 5 whys, fully focused, and then we can say, hey, let's take a little break, and let's look at the process map that was drawn based on the conversation we just had. Okay, it looks like we need to identify this and this. There's a gap here and there. Okay, let's continue to work through that, and let's continue to discuss that. And another 10 minutes later, the process map gets redrawn in real time based on the changes in the conversation that we had. And I think that's a really exciting future, because Vanessa, I'm sure you can speak to that, and you've kind of mentioned it previously, is it's pretty hard to try to take notes and do those things at the same time, such as documentation, at the same time as you're trying to have an engaged conversation. And so this is an exciting future.
Yeah, business process maps are a great tool in the tool belt. I think they're super important and often overlooked. And the idea that we might add this to that in real time is again pretty enticing. So requirements and user stories, I'm really passionate about user stories, but basically we want to make sure that these aren't ambiguous, but they are hard to write, and they're hard to write well, so that they're the backbone of a project. We want them to be testable. We want them to be small, and they are also difficult to write sometimes. So they have to be understood by stakeholders and as well as developers. So Ben, I know how I've used AI with user stories before. I can share a story initially if
Yeah,
you
please
want me.
do. Yeah.
So I actually had to use GPT earlier this week. I had to write a Spike user story. Haven't written Spike in quite a long time. And so I ended up leveraging ChatGPT, or I think Claude or something or another, to give me a typical Salesforce Spike user story. And it gave me enough of the elements and what needed to be included in it so that I was able to actually write my own Spike. I've also used it for, like, I had to write an integration user story for a project once. How do I connect SAP and Salesforce using Snap Logic? I was like, I'm not really quite sure how to approach those user stories. And so leveraging ChatGPT in my present day to get inspiration is like a good starting point on how I want to write those stories has been really helpful. And I'm sure you're going to talk about the exciting stuff that Elements is doing, because that 4-minute demo that I saw on user stories blew my mind a bit.
How are we accelerating user story generation? And I can say this, Vanessa, you'll agree, this is an incredible demo from Elements, their tool Elements GPT, where actually you have a defined process map, and they select all the boxes, and in one click, they generate user stories for all of those boxes with detailed acceptance criteria. And wait, let's go a little further. This is almost out of the scope of the BA, but I think it's worth mentioning. They have a feature called Ask Elements, where you can actually ask Elements how it might be implemented, and it'll read all the acceptance criteria. It'll consider the metadata in your org, okay? Oh, and by the way, let's pass it through the well-architected framework and generate a suggested way to implement that.
Amazing.
So, I mean, that's
it's
astonishing.
A worthwhile 4-minute demo, guys. It's the future right there.
Just another thing. Okay, user stories. There's where we headed with AI. We can do far more with that, right? Coverage of acceptance criteria, duplicate requirements, completeness, consistency. risk analysis, impact analysis. We do all these other tasks. And I think AI, you'll start to see user stories, and you'll start to see this analysis coming in a lot more.
Yeah. We focused on the analysis part. We're going to go through these a little bit quicker. So when we're talking about the build, again, acting as the bridge between the stakeholders and the developers, and if the developers hit any technical constraints, making sure that we're communicating the risks and the options to our stakeholders properly.
Looking ahead, just AI-powered risk triage. So Vanessa, I think you'll definitely resonate with this. So we build solutions. I mean, no, excuse me. We don't build solutions. As the BA, we try to assemble a complete and accurate picture of the obstacle that we're looking to solve, but we don't solution. And we don't solution because we don't want to limit the possible solutions when it gets to execution, when it gets to development. But at the same time, that makes us not necessarily, since we're not in the execution and build part of it, that makes us not necessarily aware of the technical constraints that exist. So I think AI will have a larger role to play in terms of analyzing the requirements and the user stories that are coming through the pipeline and looking at the metadata of an org and saying, okay, if we were to implement these things, where's their risk? So that developers can be made aware of that sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And demos at the end of a sprint, BAs are often the ones that are responsible for communicating what work was done over the course of a sprint, or even demoing the end-to-end solution after a whole solution has been built, and driving stakeholder buy-in and enthusiasm. I often do the storytelling for my demos, but how can AI help me here, Ben?
Well, I was doing some research on this, Vanessa, and it seems there's a staggering amount of tools that actually help you accelerate something like deck creation. And so when you're running demos, of course, it's so critical to communicate to your stakeholders clearly and often, both at varying levels of complexity, right? Kind of an introduction and then getting more detailed throughout the life cycle of the project. So on the next slide, you can see that actually here's a tool called Slides AI. And you can kind of put in some information about what am I trying to achieve? What's the message that I'm going for? What's my style? Throw in some fun images. And this is just a way to communicate quickly with your stakeholders without taking a bunch of time, because again, we're always constrained in terms of time.
I think we're constrained in terms of time right now, so we're going to blow past some of these. So UAT, I'm often using my acceptance criteria and then turning them into test scripts. How can I accelerate that, Ben?
Here's an example where we took a user story and we fed it into ChatGPT and we said, hey, let's create a test script. As fun as writing test scripts are, Vanessa.
So fun.
I think it's incredible that we can use this to accelerate that process so that a user can go through that flow without us spending a bunch of time having to write that out manually.
And then deliver. Once we have to actually go live with this, how do we communicate the timelines? Figure out how we're going to roll this out. Is it going to be a pilot? Is it going to be a big bang? Are we going to write the documentations? Do a quick start guide.
Another example with this is quick and simple, writing emails. It's probably not your favorite thing to do, but it's important. And so AI can help us write clear, kind, and concise emails, which is very important.
Yeah, and in case anybody couldn't tell, I'm a bit of a rambler, and that is my emails are also not immune to that. So getting AI to edit me a little bit is always helpful. We also have documentation and training. Again, training is just a hat that a BA wears often. How can AI help when we're doing documentation, completing those user stories, and getting training together for our users when we go live?
Yeah, so custom GPTs is a way to leverage that. And actually, there was a session on custom GPTs, and I'd recommend you go and watch that again, because it was a great session. And what they covered is the ability to utilize that to actually, you can upload files and you can ask questions of it. So on the next slide, what I actually created is a custom GPT called Salesforce User Documentation. So as BAs, we're always trying to help our users in any way we can. So whether that's providing training materials or maybe access to some process maps, at the end of the day, users are trying to get their information as quickly as possible. So this is a means by which you can upload documentation and allow users to ask questions to get fast answers.
Awesome. The custom GPT thing sounds amazing, so that users can really self-serve a lot of the things that they need. And I'd love to see it so that it gives information back to me so I can see where the user is struggling the most as well. We're finally at the operate stage. We're going more into maintenance. So getting ongoing feedback, getting new requests, building up our backlog for future projects.
So, okay, how can AI help with this? So we're engaging with stakeholders, we're collecting information, targeted feedback captured with AI. So on the next slide, you'll see an example of where this is in action. So the problem with general summaries is that, Vanessa, we work in the details. That's where we get at the truth of what we're trying to solve. And so tools that help you target specific key questions and topics and targeted summaries is a great way to accelerate understanding the feedback that's coming in.
Okay, and our last one is Salesforce releases. Everybody knows that these are 600-page monsters. Ben, how do we make these easier for BAs?
Okay, so here's the custom GPT coming again. So on the next slide, I created another fun custom GPT called Salesforce Release Analyst. And what I did is I uploaded the latest release notes from Salesforce, and it's now accessible and you can ask questions of it. Vanessa, I'm sure you have time to read the 600 plus pages.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Release notes.
I'm doing it when you're talking.
Exactly, right. So this is just another way that we can do that. And honestly, the community, you can create one, but honestly, probably the community will create one. And looking ahead, we'll probably see lots of tools that kind of allow you to access your metadata and org documentation and process maps, along with this to help you identify, okay, where are there opportunities and then where is there risk?
Yeah, how can we leverage these new features and improve proactively, because we are the internal advisors to our organizations, the business processes. Okay, guys, final thoughts before Mark Good takes the cane and drags us off. Final thoughts with Ben and Vanessa.
Okay, so we've gone through a lot here. We've seen how AI is powerful. Why BA plus AI? Well, it's a powerful way to take advantage of diverse perspectives, and we can leverage AI to view problems from a new angle. We also kind of went through all the jobs to be done and how AI is leveling that up, both with free tools and paid tools, and then looking into the future, how it's going to continue to level up BA work. And to be honest, we're just getting started, right? We're at the beginning stages of this technology. So that's a clear takeaway. Another takeaway is passive to active. Okay, so we use these tools today mostly in a chat interface, right? We go and we seek it out. I think the winning applications and the winning tools will be AI tools that are actually situationally aware of the jobs that we're doing and seek us out and are helpful without us necessarily having to continually ask them to be helpful. So I think that's true. And I think a major takeaway again is this technology allows us to do more with less. It's not necessarily that it's going to change the value of a business analyst, but what it's going to do, it's going to unlock more opportunity to do more with less.
So leverage AI as a BA to maximize the human element, though. And I think that this is really important, because while AI lets us do more with less, I really think AI will be hard pressed to replace a skilled business analyst anytime soon. With AI, there's the opportunity also to do more with more. And what I mean by that is we can do more active listening because we'll have tools to organize our notes. We'll be able to focus on stakeholder words and be able to see the subtle changes in their faces and know when we need to dig into things a little bit further, because there's probably skeletons in the closet that we haven't unearthed yet. We can improve our messaging and, edit my emails a little bit more and get our communication more focused and communicate hard things in an easier way with an AI collaborator. And it also means that we can focus on building relationships so that we can crack a joke and build that trust and that likability and build that bridge between people. Understanding pain points is what we do. So think of AI as really a solution to some of our pain points as BAs. It's a solution to our time and our focus challenges so that we're freed up to do what we do best, which is to build bridges between people on Salesforce projects. So remember, you can use AI to enhance and focus the best parts of your BA skill set, which is your creativity, your drive to help others, your compassion, and building those human connections. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ben.